Dobry večer. Good evening. Just in case my Russian was a little... let me thank Rabbi Kanelsky for his very gracious introduction. He delivered it just as I wrote it for him, so I appreciate it. No, I'm just kidding. It was very, very gracious of him, and I appreciate it. And I told the rabbi earlier when we were having the reception time, you need to be more enthusiastic about the center, you know, and I said that kiddingly, of course, because his enthusiasm is infectious and extraordinary. And I know he is brimming with pride on behalf of all of the community. So, Rabbi, many good years here, and thank you for inviting me to celebrate the gala public launch of this new, beautiful synagogue and the Center for Jewish Life. And to all of the founding members who made it possible, my congratulations on a new beginning for this great community. In a way, it speaks... In a way, I know my colleague, Congressman Pallone, who I served with in the House of Representatives and is now in a new congressional district starting next January, will be representing Marlborough. I know he and I would believe that, in a way, it speaks to the fundamental importance of religious freedom and the role of faith in a brave new world we live in. Rabbi Kanelsky has long had a dream of a grand new Orthodox synagogue, and his 18,000 square foot home to 2,000 Russian-American Jews in Monmouth, Middlesex, and Ocean County is his dream and your dream come true. And from what I'm told about the rabbi's computer skills, who knows how many more followers he has on Twitter and Facebook, in addition to all of those as part of the congregation. But seriously, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate unexpectedly the recognition, and I will treasure it. Let me also offer my congratulations to the other honorees, your Community Service Award recipient, Mayor Hornick, who has just won his re-election, an extraordinary public servant. To Murad and Simone Mesh, the recipients of the Young Leadership Award. Congratulations to them. And to all the building founders who will be recognized, who have given their hearts and their resources to this wonderful endeavor. Tonight's a new beginning here in Marlborough. It is a new beginning for all members of the Jewish community, regardless of their background, regardless of their affiliations. But most importantly, it is a new beginning to the many Russian immigrants who now have a place to practice their religious beliefs freely, without fear or hesitation, a place to openly proclaim their faith and assimilate to their chosen religious and cultural practices, as all free people should. That was not always the case. For several generations of Russian Jews, their religion was sidelined. The Russian government closed down synagogues, published anti-Semitic books that actually accused Judaism of being a Nazi-like religion. But on the other side of the world, their Jewish brethren noticed. In 1964, a time of early student movements in this country, we saw the formation of the Student Struggle for Soviet Jewry, founded by its first and longtime leader, Jacob Birnbaum. Since then, the rights of Jews to live as Jews and practice their religion within Russia and to leave the country if they so wish, became more than just a student struggle. It became a worldwide human struggle. And by the 1980s, a yeshiva was established inside the former Soviet Union for the first time since the Communist Revolution in 1917. But as we know, anti-Semitism did not stop. Before the fall of communism in the Soviet Union, anti-Semitism was rampant. There were no public celebrations of Jewish holidays for Russian Jews. You were not free to practice your faith or publicly proclaim your religious beliefs. As Rabbi Kanelsky has said, it was simply unheard of. He said in December when Mayor Hornick attended the lighting of the menorah, quote, "If it wasn't even in someone's wildest dreams to be invited to a Hanukkah celebration where a member of the government would be present saluting. and not in a form of persecution. So it is indeed wonderful that as elected representatives, we can all celebrate together with you, Mayor Hornick and Congressman Pallone and the councilman and myself. It has been a long path to religious freedom for many of you, leaving a home in Russia for the United States. Now, perhaps years after assimilating to the American way of life, you have found a new home, a religious home. You have come together to rekindle your Jewish faith, strengthen your Jewish identity that for too long and too harshly was denied in the former Soviet Union. You have come to embrace your Jewish heritage and pray for the future of the Jewish people in Israel, having struggled to recapture your own Jewish identity. And I salute you for a commitment at a time when we are witnessing a rise in ultra-nationalist, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic groups and activities everywhere, and unrest in the Middle East, the outcome of which remains a question. So tonight we're here to celebrate religious freedom, but we are not naive. We know that all hatreds still plague our society. We have seen it recently, not only in the Middle East, but right here in New Jersey, in our own backyard. On Wednesday morning, a congregation Bethel in Rutherford, New Jersey. As you all may have been aware of the news, it was a heinous crime, serious enough to be treated not simply as a hate crime, but as an attempted homicide. It involved sophisticated incendiary devices, one of which made its way through the rabbi's bedroom window on the second floor. The rabbi's hand was burned, but thankfully, neither he nor his family were severely hurt. I was with him last evening in an interfaith service where the whole community came out to speak out against the children of darkness and to speak up as the children of light. In 1 month, we have seen 4 separate attacks of anti-Semitic hatred surface in Bergen County. At the time of the first 2 incidents, I stated that historical teachings teach us that vandalism and expressions of hatred can often escalate into something even more virulent. And now these incidents have escalated from graffiti to arson to attempted murder. This attack is more than an attack on the rabbi and his family. It is an attack on each and every one of us. This vitriolic act of hatred cannot stand. That is why years ago, when I was in the New Jersey legislature, at a different time, in a different set of circumstances, I authored the landmark New Jersey Bias Crime Law, because I wanted us to send a very clear societal message that we would never permit nor stand for acts of hatred to take place. And of course, what happened yesterday with the community coming together is the strongest action that can be taken. I have talked to law enforcement who have assured me that they are treating all of these occurrences with great seriousness. I have written to the Attorney General of the United States to ask the Department of Justice commit all of its necessary federal resources to combat these acts of hatred. And so we look forward to the capture of those who committed these acts of hatred and to peace once again settling upon the community. And while these are examples of challenges here at home, I also see examples as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee of a frightening worldwide increase in anti-Semitic incidents that, as always, are part of the attempt to delegitimize Israel and the Jewish faith in the eyes of the world. Whether it's Russia's ultra-nationalist right wing propagating anti-Semitism in Moscow, or white supremacists, or Qassam rockets from Hamas in Gaza, a nuclear threat from Iran, or a firebomb in Rutherford, the hatred, the violence, the anti-Semitism must end. And nowhere is there more anti-Semitic fervor than that which is associated with Israel. Which brings me to the final topic I want to talk about, which is the Middle East and the upheaval in that area over the past year. Clearly, the Arab Spring brings new challenges to the state of Israel. The potential of a nuclear Iran, the rising power of the Muslim Brotherhood, the rise of the more radical Salafis Al-Noor party in Egypt, all threaten to once again serve to those who try to delegitimize Israel and dishonor the peace agreement for which land in the Sinai was traded for peace. These new developments are putting the region's only true democracy between a rock and a hard place. Israel has seen the harbinger of peace agreements that in the end may not be worth the paper they were written on. The Arab Spring may have changed the landscape in the Middle East, but I think there is one thing that the Jewish people and the state of Israel should clearly know, that it will never change the United States' commitment to a beacon of democracy in a sea of autocracy and our relationship with our major ally, the state of Israel. It will only strengthen it. It will strengthen our resolve to deal with Iran through sanctions and to make sure they never achieve a nuclear weapon. Iran, which threatens to wipe Israel off of the map, is a threat not only to Israel, but to the entire world. Europeans have come to understand that Shahab missiles can not only be lobbed into Israel, they can be lobbed into NATO countries. The sanctions we have already put in place and those that I sponsored this past December in the Congress, at a time in which you may have seen our Congress doesn't always come together all of the time, that amendment passed 100-0 in support of additional sanctions on Iran and on the central bank of Iran to collapse its economic system and therefore not have the wherewithal to ultimately achieve that nuclear power. They have caused a deflation of Iran's currency. And we're seeing reports that countries, namely the Chinese, are demanding huge price discounts on their purchases of crude from Iran, and that other countries are looking for ways to avert purchasing Iranian crude because they know that they will be sanctioned by the United States. The sanctions, combined with an unexpected but phased-in embargo by the EU on Iranian oil, is also causing the Iranian regime to lash out. You've heard that they're threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz and to prevent U.S. ships from entering the Gulf. I believe that that is an empty threat because Iran uses the Strait to export its crude and for necessary imports, but we will never permit the Strait of Hormuz to be closed. You've also heard that Tehran announced last week that it had begun to enrich uranium at a second site. And the International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed that Tehran had been enriching uranium up to 20% at its northern Fordo plant. Enrichment to 20% is an important step towards making uranium weapons grade. We, along with the United Kingdom, France, and even Russia, have condemned the move, and it is clear, as the threat becomes more real, that we must be in a position to present a credible military option, demonstrate that we have the will and capacity to act, and that we will continue to arm Israel so it can defend itself. The fact is, all options have to be on the table to prevent Iran from developing nuclear capability that would clearly be a threat to Israel, the region, and the world. And while Iran poses an unimaginable threat because of its looming military capabilities, it has also been a destabilizing force due to its relentless efforts to delegitimize Israel. In that world, I often, as I deal with interparliamentary groups, I sometimes cannot believe what I hear. In that world, I call it the delegitimizers world, even among some in our country, anti-Israel fervor is somehow justified on the grounds of quote-unquote social justice. The Palestinians, if you listen to their view, are the downtrodden and must be freed from the quote occupation. It is a one-sided story. Qassam rockets fall on innocent Israeli families, but they are not talked about. Suicide bombers are not talked about. Talk of annihilation of Israel are not talked about. Maps that exclude the state of Israel are not talked about. But such violence and such maps often seem to get a pass. Israel gets vilified for defending itself, which any sovereign country has the right to do, vilified for its very existence. Its history and the truth get ignored, and many in the media play along with that narrative. That's why we need to speak out for Israel. We need to do as I did when I authored a letter with a whole host of my colleagues in the Senate to President Obama and say, we cannot have U.S. taxpayer dollars go to a Palestinian Authority that has Hamas, a terrorist organization that threatens the destruction of Israel. That's why I have been a longtime supporter of our assistance to Israel, and this past year, most particularly, of a special missile defense system called Iron Dome, so that Israeli citizens could be protected. That is why I was the first senator to call upon the president to say that when and if the Palestinian Authority tried to get unilateral recognition at the United Nations, the United States needed to use its veto at the United Nations not to permit that. That is why I have said that President Abbas's misguided actions at the UN will not bring peace to the Palestinian people. It will not help restart peace negotiations with Israel, and it will not bring any advantage to their aspirations. Nothing will have changed. Israel has negotiated in good faith with Palestinian Authority. It removed its troops from Gaza and large areas of the Western Bank, and for its efforts to seek peace, what has Israel received in return? Missile attacks from Gaza and suicide attacks in its cities. Let me be clear. As one member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, but I believe this view is more even widely held, the United States is not simply an ally of Israel's people, it is an ally of Israel's democratic ideals. It is an ally of its history, of its aspirations for peace and prosperity, of its can-do spirit, of those who made the desert bloom, and its amazing resilience in the threats of all sides. And let me conclude by saying, there are certain issues that are not only for our time, but for all time. And that is the right of a people to live in peace and security, the right of Israelis to live in their homeland, and the right of Russian Jews to practice their faith wherever and however they please, and the world to recognize that right and the courage and determination of you as all Russian Jews to do so. It is why I have for 20 years in the House and the United States Senate been an unwavering supporter of the State of Israel, even when I was in the House of Representatives and represented a congressional district that had far more Palestinians and Arabs than it had members of the Jewish community. I have always believed that it is in the national interest and security of the United States to stand by in an unwavering posture with the State of Israel. It is why I have always tried to understand the history of Israel, and why in June of 2009 I went to the floor of the Senate after President Obama made his speech in Cairo. I felt that there were things that were missing in that speech, and to state an additional view on Israel, its history, its importance, and its founding. I said at that time, while the Shoah has a central role in Israel's identity, it is not the reason behind its founding, and it is not the main justification for its existence. The extreme characterization of this mistaken view is often taken as following. The Western powers, as said, established Israel in 1948 based on their own guilt, supposedly at the expense of the Arab people who lived there. Therefore, those who argue that view say the current state is illegitimate and should be wiped off the face of the map. This flawed argument is not only in defiance of basic human dignity, but in plain defiance of history. It is in defiance of ancient history as told in biblical texts and through archaeological evidence. It is my belief that several millennia leads to an undeniable conclusion. The reestablishment of Israel in modern times is a political reality that traces its root to Abraham and Sarah and cannot be denied by anyone in this world. And so the way to consider the immeasurable impact of the Holocaust is not to ask whether the State of Israel would otherwise exist. It is to lament that the world stood by and did nothing. I understand that Israel is a shining light that welcomes visitors from all over the world, people of different faiths and backgrounds. In my first visit to Israel as a Christian, I was moved by the fact that I could climb the Temple Mount, visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, visit Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock and the Western Wall, Rachel's tomb, and the list goes on. That was not always the case. It is only when Israel has had authority over Jerusalem that it has been open to all faiths. So I am convinced, as I have been for 20 years, that this great democracy in a sea of autocracy, a democracy that opens up its religions, its opportunity for religious freedom to all, is something we need to cherish, something we need to work for. And for so long as I am a United States Senator, Israel, as it has had for the last 20 years, will have my hand in friendship and the power of my office to ensure its security, to ensure its freedom, and to ensure the religious freedom of all of those who call the Jewish faith their own. Thank you very much for having me.